You're listening to the Photography Pod, the ultimate podcast for photography lovers. And here's your hosts, Steve Vaughan and Martin Cheung.
Hello and welcome to a brand new podcast, The Photography Pod. This is a podcast both for professional photographers and for enthusiast photographers. My name is Steve Vaughan. I'm a wedding photographer based here in the UK, and I'm joined by my good mate and host, Martin Cheung. Martin, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, great to be here. So, our first ever podcast together. Exciting, eh?
I know, it's very exciting, yeah. New adventures.
New adventures, absolutely. So let's just talk a little bit about what we're doing. So the idea that we've had, and you and I have been chatting about this for a while, really, is just to have a new podcast for anybody who's into photography, really, whether you do it professionally, whether you do it for fun. And we're going to have some guests. We're going to have some guests, other photographers to come on from a whole wide genre of photography. So even though we're into weddings, that's what we do. You know, it's not going to just be a wedding podcast. We'll get people from other parts of the whole genre of photography as well. We both use Sony equipment, but this isn't a Sony podcast. The fact that we use Sony, you know, there's going to be a lot of Sony talk, I'm sure, but we're not Sony specific, are we?
Yeah, when we're talking about gear, I'm sure it might lean a little bit that way. But yeah, I'm keen for this to be open to anybody who is interested in photography in general, really.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a big wide world out there, and there's lots of great camera gear and stuff, isn't there? Yeah, and I've probably bought most of it at some stage, like you as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it? You start off this hobby thinking, oh, it's nice and cheap, and then the more you get into it, you realise that actually it's very expensive.
There's nothing cheap about photography, is there, really? So,
nothing at all.
Yeah. So I guess what we should do, really, is let the world of the listener know a bit more about who we are, really, and why anybody would be interested in what we do, really. So I guess what would be good, really, for you and I, perhaps kind of interview each other almost, really, even though we know each other.
Let's do it, yeah.
So should we start with you?
Oh, God, yeah, okay.
So how long have you been a photographer?
I think this will be my 11th year.
Okay.
Not full time, because like most people who start off in as a photographer, you don't start off full time.
No, absolutely.
Most don't anyway. But certainly 11 years of trading at least. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been a little while now. Yeah. And like most people, I started off not really expecting this to grow into a full time business. But the more I did it, the more I realized it made me realize how fulfilling wedding photography is, and how unsatisfying my regular 9-to-5 job was. So yeah.
What did you do before?
I worked in IT. Works for one of the biggest IT companies in the world. Okay. And yeah, I was doing quite well. I was quite happy. You know, it was all I've ever known, and you know, it was all good. But yeah, like I say, over time, I just felt that, especially with weddings, you get a lot more job satisfaction because you're sort of talking to clients and everyone's on their best behaviour. It's a big party at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And that's just so much more interesting than punching numbers in a spreadsheet and talking geek to a load of other geeks. And I am a geek, you know, so I enjoyed that part of it. Yeah, exactly. But there comes a point when you realise that actually, you know, this is just so much more job satisfaction. You know, it just gives me a lot more job satisfaction than the IT job ever did.
No, absolutely. Now, you do a lot of weddings. You do more than I do, don't you? So how many weddings typically do you do a year?
I say that. This is where it gets a bit interesting. Every year, I set myself a target of around 40 to 45. Okay. Most years, I go over that just because I like to make hay while the sun shines.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and I know a lot of people say that's a lot of weddings, but because I enjoy what I do, it doesn't feel like work. You know, it honestly, even after 10 years, it just feels like I'm going to a party, you know.
Fantastic.
3 or 4 parties a week, what's not to like, do you know what I
mean? My waistline perhaps doesn't agree with you on that one, but that's another story. Yeah. So you're like me, you work with your wife as well, don't you? Yeah.
Yes, but in a slightly different way to you.
No, sure.
You two are both photographers.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, you know, my wife is a videographer. So that in itself does get interesting. You know, I was saying to someone yesterday that because we're doing slightly different jobs, we sometimes end up falling out because we both want different things. And then, you know...
No domestics at weddings, I'm sure.
No, plenty of domestic at wedding is what I'm trying to say. But we, you know, over the years, we found a way to work around it, and most weddings now, we get on fine now.
Fantastic.
But yeah, there were times where, you know, we have been sat at different sides of a wedding venue, barely talking to each other.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. So, do you always do work together? Then is she always with you, or do you just sometimes do weddings on your own? Okay.
Not always. The way we work is she's got her own separate limited company business,
right.
and people can hire one of us. They can hire both of us. It really depends on what they want and, you know, how they feel about it, basically.
And I love your work. I was looking at your website again the other day, and your website's all about fun and colour and people having a great time, and that's what weddings should be about, shouldn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's I think for many years you sort of get yourself in trends in this business, and and it's only taken me this long to sort of find a style that I'm comfortable with, and you know who I am. So I think over the years I've come to realise that you're really selling yourself in this business, aren't you?
Oh, completely.
You're not. Although you are selling photography, the photography is almost as a given. You know, you're supposed to take good photos. So what else are you selling yourself on? How are you going to differentiate yourself? And the answer to that is yourself. So you've just got to show what you love to shoot and find the clients that love what you do, basically.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a great believer that people buy from people.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
hopefully.
Yeah.
We try to. Yeah, we try to.
Yeah. What about yourself, Steve? How long have you been in the business?
We've had a limited company now for 14 years. We're like you in that we both kind of fell into it a little bit. So Sam's my second wife, and I've always been into photography, always been into gear, really, you know, hi-fi, computers, you name it. And when we got together, Sam's very artistic, so she's a very good drawer. So I taught her the mechanics of photography. And even now, she's got a far better eye for things than I'll ever see, because she's got that artist's view on things, really. And then she wanted to quit her job, so we said, well, could we ever go, because we'd done a few weddings to help people out, could we do this as a business? And at various stages over the 14 years, it's been her job, it's been my job, it's been both our jobs. And it just, you know, depends on what we're, and our personal circumstances. So my background, I'm a scientist. I was a chemist, a research chemist for a while. Then I got into the dark side, as they say. I got into the world of sales for many years. So I sold scientific instruments throughout the world, actually. I lived in the States for a little while. But about 10 years ago, I was running some quite big businesses for another large American company, different one to yours, but an equally big one. And it was making me ill. I had no life. I was leaving laptops on planes. I was, you know, the movie The Naked Gun, where he goes into the toilet with a radio microphone on and he starts to use the loo. I did exactly that. I ran a conference of 150 people.
Oh, no, really?
And they literally heard me go, "Arr!" And then thankfully the service manager stopped me before I did anything else. So my brain was fried and I had to get out of that life, really. So I jacked it in. I miss the salary sometimes, don't get me wrong. But
that's the security of the money coming every month. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, completely. But we both work together. We're very much photographers as a partnership, so people book the pair of us. You know, Sam won't mind me saying that I'm the more technical, geeky photographer. She's more the sort of, you know, the vision side of things, really. And it works well. We're mostly documentary in style, if people know what I mean by that. So we do most of our images all as we see them, rather than heavily created. But getting more into flash work, as I know you are, inspired by the Flash Masters group that we're both members of. And yeah, we love it. I'm a bit older than you, so I'm seeing the world when I'm not going to be a photographer at some stage. So I also now run a training business. I do sales training in my old industry of lab equipment, which isn't as much fun, but actually pays a bit more, if I'm being honest. So I am envisaging the world of not being a professional photographer, perhaps in 2 or 3 years' time. But I'll always be a photographer as long as I'm on this earth, all being well. So. Yeah, so that's me.
No, I think that's it. Once you've been in this industry a while, I think you have to make sure you've got a parachute packed. I did a year's mentoring with Tyler Workin last year.
Oh, wow.
He's very much of the same mindset. You know, he very much believes you've only got a certain amount of years in this industry. He sets it at 10 years, and I was like, well, I still enjoy it after 10 years, but he was like, you've got a 10-year lifespan. After 10 years, you think everything's just rubbish and you don't like it anymore. And I was like, I don't think that's quite true.
Not quite there yet. No.
But yeah, I think certainly as you go on, because this is one of those industries where I don't think you can go on until you're 67. You know, I think it's very difficult.
So well.
Oh.
Martin, I lost you for a second.
Oh, yeah, you're back. Yeah, I lost you as well. But
weird. You just
froze.
Yeah, weird. Okay, well, I can cut that bit out, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know what part it sort of cut off.
You were just saying about 10-year lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, so, it was just, Tyler believes you've got a 10-year lifespan in this industry before you sort of become really jaded about weddings. And so far, I'd like to think that he's wrong on that one, because here I am 11 years and still loving weddings in general, really.
Yeah. And you've got to love weddings. I think you've got to love people to do this job as well, because I meet some wedding photographers who clearly don't seem to like people.
Yeah,
and if you've got to spend 12 hours or 14 hours as somebody else's gig 3 or 4 times a week, particularly in your case, you've got to like people, otherwise you're in the wrong job, aren't you, really?
I think what you said a minute ago, though, resonated with me a bit in that I always say there's 2 sorts of people in this industry. You've got the very technical people like me and you who love our gadgets and we think about things in terms of how does that technically work? And we're the ones who run around buying all the lenses and stuff. Yeah. And then you've got people like my wife and Sam, your wife, who are very much arty. Yeah. And like my wife, you'll give her a lens, and don't get me wrong, she can, if she wants, have a conversation with you about a lens and the f-stops and, focal lengths and all that jazz, but she really doesn't want to. She really couldn't care less. To her, a camera's a camera, a lens is a lens. It does a job, there it is. And that's all she's interested in, but she's very arty. And I never knew that about her until she did her first wedding. I'd never seen that side of her at all. I remember the first time she said she wanted to do it, and I was like, oh my goodness, what have we let ourselves in for? But even after her first wedding, I saw how creative she was. Gosh. And I thought, right, there's something here we really need to nurture, because I'd never seen that side of her before. But yeah, I think that it's 2 sides, and I don't know, like, which is better, do you come in, is technical knowledge better, or is creative better? Yeah.
Yin and yang, I suppose, really. I think as long you've got to be able to use your camera and know how to set certain settings for certain jobs, clearly. But I can also think lots of photographers are technically very good, but very, very boring in terms of the images they take as well.
I often think that, for me, creativity trumps technical, because you can teach someone the technical. It's very difficult to teach someone the creativity. Right. Yeah, I
think you're right. And
so sometimes I often do wish I was more creative.
And I think that's where our other halves come in, really. Sam really, she draws pictures of pets and things, and she's, if I try and draw a pet, he looks like a stick man. She's got the ability to do that. Yeah,
likewise. Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating. But you only photograph weddings, so you're a bit different to me. So for you, I think you photograph weddings, but you wouldn't go and do street photography for fun or something.
Not that. I've done a little bit of commercial work. To fill the gaps, earn a little bit of extra money. But I am perhaps, I want to say unique, but I'm sure I'm not. Outside of weddings, I don't really want to do street. I appreciate a good landscape shot, but I don't really want to get up at the crack of dawn and trek up the side of a mountain and set a tripod up and wait. I'd rather stay in bed and have another cup of coffee, whilst I appreciate what goes into a good photograph, it's just not for me. I just like photographing people at weddings because they're having fun, the unexpected moments, that sort of thing. What about yourself?
No, I think that's fine. I mean, if you were a woodworker, you wouldn't do, you wouldn't make tables at home for the weekend for fun, would you? So I do. It's time as always, really, isn't it, really? When you've got a full summer, as we both had last year, and we have again this year, the idea of going out and doing some fun photography when you've got 4 weddings on your computer needing editing it's difficult, isn't it, really? I do like doing sport photography, so I'll go to some local non-league games where I live. So I live in North Oxfordshire, as you know, so I've got Banbury, Brackley, teams like that have, not at the top level, but of a reasonable standard. And normally they're okay for you to go and take some pictures as long as you share them with them. and I do like landscape. I wouldn't say I was any good at it. But street is something I do enjoy doing, and I've been at a few street photography workshops, and just what I like about street photography gets me out, gets me some exercise. So even if I don't take any pictures or the pictures are shite, I can still go out and enjoy the fresh air, walk 10 miles in London and feel like I've done something, even if at the end of the day the output isn't what I want really. So well, when we go through the show, in future shows, we're going to have guests I know in all these kind of genres. So we'll have wedding photographers, but we'll also have street photographers, landscape photographers, and all those kind of people as well, I'm sure.
Yeah,
in fact,
absolutely.
I know because we've got them lined up. Shall we talk a bit of gear? Shall we do a bit of geeky stuff?
Why not?
So what's your main weapon of choice when you do a wedding?
Camera-wise, I shoot on Sony A1s now.
Okay.
And I've got a Sony A9 as my backup camera. So I've got two Sony A1s,
right.
Which I love. I think they are the perfect wedding camera right now. I know a lot of people at the moment are big on the Sony A9 version 3, but personally I don't think that's really a wedding camera.
Well, time will tell, but I think it's a sport photographer camera for me. But we'll see. Yeah.
And then lenses, I've got all sorts of lenses. I can shoot primes, I can shoot zooms. It all depends on what I want to do and how I feel. Often at certain times of the day, I think overall I enjoy shooting with primes more because of the discipline and the creativity and the challenge that primes give me. Zooms are easy. Where I tend to use zoom lenses, especially my favourite zoom, which is the 35 to 150, is when space is tight or I'm in a rush, which is quite often at a wedding. Okay. So then I just drop to one camera, one lens, and it's just easier. What about yourself?
We're broadly similar. So I'm 2-camera, 2-prime person. Sam's a 1-camera zoom, but obviously we have a backup as well. So I'm on a 7 IV. I have an A7R4 as well, which some people might think is a bit overkill, having a 61 megapixel sensor camera for a wedding. But I actually like it because I like to shoot with 24, which is a bit different for some people. I know the classic mix for a wedding is 35-85. Is that what you use?
Yes and no. For many years I shot when I was using primes 35-85 because they're good sort of focal lengths to have at a wedding, aren't they? But I think as time's gone on and I'm enjoying the documentary side more and more, I'm finding myself wanting to go wider and wider. So now I do use, especially on the A1 because that's 50 megapixels.
Yeah,
I do like using the 24 because at a flick of a button I can go to 35-ish. So it sort of gives me two focal lengths, and then 55 gives me the 85-ish. So
absolutely, yeah. That's exactly the reason why I like it. So the 24, the 24 1.4, the GM lens is the best lens I've ever used. It's optically incredible.
That lens. Love
it's
that lens.
So sharp. Though it can distort a little bit if you're not careful with it. But as you say, on a high megapixel camera, you can very quickly punch that into 35mm. Yeah. And it becomes effectively. I used to shoot Fuji. Effectively becomes the Fuji X-T3 in terms of view and resolution. Yeah. But I do like that slightly wider look when I am doing the documentary. Yeah. What I call the drinks and nibbles time. I like that sort of wider view of the world. But if you need to, you can crop right in, as you say. So I bought the 51.2 last year, which is an amazing lens. It's absolutely stunning lens. And I have a Sigma 85 as well, which I'll use if I do want to go 35-85. I've got both of those options. Yeah,
I've seen a lot of people rave about the 51.2, and I'm sure it's a lovely, lovely lens. But I think as time's gone on, I prefer the small lenses.
That's a downside.
Travel light, lighter to hold for 10 hours at a day. And I'm losing the 1.4, 1.8. The 24 is obviously a very small lens, but it's not a big deal nowadays. And
so you're on 55,
I ever shoot 1.2? Yeah, because I don't use...
it's a great lens,
I don't use the big lenses. They're just too heavy. And my bag's so big and heavy already. Why would I want to carry even more big and heavy lenses?
No, you make a great point, actually. Yeah.
Just small and nimble. You're less conspicuous as well.
Around here we have a lot of Cotswoldy barns that are like the Black Hole of Calcutta. So the 1.2 does occasionally come in useful. I can think of one venue not far from here where there's only really one source of light. It's a big window that's kind of up So if I'm looking down the venue and the bride and groom in front of me, it's just up to my left-hand side.
Yeah.
And that's the only real source of light. So it can look quite spectacular, but you've got a spotlit bride, like it's a light beam from heaven coming down on there. But it is dark. So the 1.2 does come in useful sometimes around that. But no, I totally get you, but it is a solid lump of glass. Sam's on an A9, the original A9 still.
Love that camera.
Oh,
I would still argue it's the best camera price performance.
I think you're right.
Absolutely. It's the only camera I have ever owned since I got it for, I mean, how many years is it now? 6-7 years, something like that. It's been out for, and I've still got it. Do you know what I mean? I have never owned a camera for that long. Never.
It's a great camera. No, it is. And of course, whenever we see couples for the first time and we say, "Oh, we got this magic silent camera," like you have with the A1s, you know, it's like, "Oh, this is black magic."
Yeah.
And then she's on the 2470 GM2 for her main lens. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that one. But
it's belting.
I think especially for weddings, the silent shooting, you just can't describe to someone how much more liberating it is. I know other mirrorless cameras have silent modes, but a lot of them don't have the special sensor. I know there's higher end ones, and Canon and Nikon do now, like the R3 and the Z8 and Z9s. But just the ability to shoot at any shutter speed is just so liberating.
It absolutely is. And also whenever we meet the vicar for the first time, and if we've got a vicar, if it's a church wedding where they're a little bit anti-photography, as many of them are, sometimes for good reason, when we show them that we've got a silent camera, it does get us in our good books quite often. I'm sure you're the same with the A1s,
Yeah, but vicars just need to wake up and realise that they're a consumer business at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
And they might not like to think that, but they're a business, so just get with it and think about the customers anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the most recent thing you bought then? In terms of gear?
Gosh! In fact, you might be able to see it in the corner of the frame.
I can, yeah. Wow, look at that.
I'll reach over for it.
Look at this. I should say why Martin's doing this. In the groups that we both frequent, Martin and I have got a reputation for talking people into buying gear.
I know. It's basically the Samyang 35 to 150 because I've been having some issues with the Tamron version on the A1. It's been perfect on the A9, but on the A1 it's been disconnecting a bit. So I'm testing out the Samyang,
right? And
depending on how that performs, I'll either sell the Tamron or I'll send the Samyang back. So one of the two. I don't know yet. Optically, they're practically the same. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And do you not find that a big lump of glass, the 35 to
it
150?
Is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. But, like I said, when you are, like, for example, at speeches, it allows me the ability to, like, leave, because I use a spider belt, so I can just unclip the spider belt, put one camera down, so I'm literally just carrying one camera, one lens. And likewise, if I'm in a rush, you know what some weddings are like, you were supposed to have, like, half an hour of portraits, but you've really only got 5 minutes.
Yeah,
in that situation, I'll just take one camera, one lens again, 35, 150, get out there, boom, 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 job done, and you're back in the room again.
No,
so you're not wasting time swapping lenses and all that sort of stuff.
My wife isn't going to listen to this podcast because I might be tempted to go buy a Tamron 35 to 150.
Yeah,
I'll blame you.
Yeah, blame me, mate. Or wait a few weeks, and if I don't like it, you can buy the Tamron off me because, like I said, it's perfect on the any other thing but just the A1s. Yeah.
So what about the A1? You said it's a perfect wedding camera. What else makes it a perfect wedding camera then, apart from the silent shutter? Well,
you've got like how I don't think Sony are the only people to do it, but you know how they've got the different cameras have different things. So, for example, the A7R series have the megapixels.
Yep.
The A9 has the speed and the silent shutter.
Yep.
The A7S have the video features.
Yep.
But the A1 sort of merges everything together without compromising. So I've got the high megapixels, I've got the speed, I've got the video features, I've got this full silent shooting. It's just a wedding camera that doesn't compromise anywhere, which is what makes it so good. Yeah,
we've looked at it a few times. It's whether whether we can justify. Because we probably have to buy two if we were to buy one, and that's a serious lump of cash, really.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. See, before Dag was in the business, it was really good because I could just sneak stuff in, just get Amazon to deliver it during the day before she got home from work.
Oh, I love it.
But now she spots it from a mile off, and there have been situations where I've bought a lens And then like a week later, I'm looking for it, going, "Where's it? It's gone," and it's nowhere to be found. But suddenly, my wife's got an extra lens in her bag, and that's
Brilliant.
it.
I love it.
And it's AWOL to the point where I think, I might as well order another one now.
Fantastic.
Because I ain't getting that back.
I do get the "now what you've been ordering" comment from time to time. You get that as well, yeah.
Yeah, but I do take I do take a lot of enjoyment though when I turn around and go, actually, it's for you.
Get out of jail free.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, haha, but it's not for me this time. It's for you. Yeah.
Fantastic.
But like I say, she's not gear obsessed like I am. And even then, I always say, look, now I'm buying less gear now, a lot less gear now. Yeah, I think when you first start off, you convince yourself, don't you, that, and this is not just weddings, it's for anyone who's photography minded. Yeah. You're convinced that this bit of equipment will change everything. No matter what it is, whether it's a grey card thing or a reflector or a softbox or whatever it is, this will change everything. And you buy it and you realise after a while, it doesn't change a thing really.
Doesn't change a thing, no.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Lightroom like loop decks and things I've bought over the years. And that's going to make it. I've never used the bloody thing. Yeah,
I've got cupboard and cupboard fulls of junk that I don't use anymore. Fantastic. And I need to get around to selling.
Yeah, we should have a yard sale between us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting what you say about that sort of wanting stuff. So in my sales training world, one of the things that I teach people is that people buy for emotional reasons and then justify them for business reasons. So you just described that really, and I did the same. I buy something because I want it, and then I try and find reasons why I need it really. Yeah. So
and the other one is gas, isn't it? Gear acquisition syndrome.
Completely.
Yeah, that's very common, more so for men than women. I think
that's right. Yeah.
I think it generally seems to be a male thing than a
boys'
female
toys.
thing. Yeah, exactly. Boys and the toys. Yeah, absolutely. It's very true.
Guilty as charged.
I always say to my wife, we men don't grow up; our toys just get more expensive, and photography proves that. All of a sudden, it's not. I want a PlayStation. All of a sudden, it's this. I want this 1,500 quid lens. And like you say, you're trying to justify it then.
Oh, no, completely. It was hi-fi for me when I was younger. I used to be really into hi-fi. I used to have a stupid turntable. I think I had a 500 quid pickup cartridge, you name it. And then, getting remarried, you sometimes realise your disposable income isn't quite what it was, so it all went. But no, any kind of technology is of interest because I'm a scientific person. That's my background.
Yeah, exactly, and it appeals to us. Yeah,
completely. So let's sort of think about the world in 3 or 4 years' time then. So I'm probably slowly on my wind down from the world of weddings. We're going to be doing weddings for another few years, but we're slowly starting to slide down a bit. But you've said that you still a lot of fun in it, and you are a bit younger than me.
Oh yeah, I think for the next 3 or 4 years, I don't think too much will change for me.
No, I'm sure. So where do you see the sort of the wedding photography business going, though, both in terms of gear, but also in terms of the industry as well? Where do you see that going, do you think, in the next few years?
I think in terms of gear, I don't think too much will change because I think we've got to the point with cameras where they're all so good now.
Absolutely.
There really isn't a duffer camera anymore. Even with the most basic entry-level camera now is far better if you think back to when we used to photograph. I was telling someone the other day, one of my first Sony cameras when I was shooting weddings, you couldn't take it over ISO 800 because the noise would be just ridiculous, unusable bad. Whereas now you get to ISO 6400 and it's clean as a whistle. So I think in terms of kit, I think we're pretty much there. The biggest challenge with certainly wedding photography now and making a living from it is the sheer saturation point of it. And I think that's a challenge where everyone's having. But curiously enough, I think when I started out, it was very much considered that the market was saturated even back then. And obviously looking back, that's not the case. It's even more saturated now than it was 10 years ago. And every year it seems to be getting worse and worse. So I think that will be a big challenge for a lot of people. Being able to stay relevant in a very competitive market. And I think that's the biggest challenge I would see for wedding photographers.
I think you're right. I mean, people will still be getting married, I think, in 5 years' time, and hopefully as many people. I think as you say, there's always somebody new joining the industry every week, really, and then old so-and-sos like me still hanging around. So I've done a bit of sort of one-to-one coaching and training with some photographers on the selling side of things, really. And one of the things I always say to them is, what makes you different? If you can't explain what makes you different, how do you expect your customers to understand it, really? And by the way, the answer isn't just the photos.
Absolutely.
The photos have to be a certain standard that gets you in the door. But if you can't articulate what makes you different, then how do you expect your customers to understand that, really?
Also, sometimes don't you find that people don't know themselves because you're too close to it? You know, I can't sometimes tell what's a good photo anymore because I remember how the day was, and that impacts what I feel about that photo. Whereas
I lost you again for a second, Martin. Sorry, to just start that sentence again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I sometimes feel though that sometimes you can be a little bit too close to your own photos, so you don't judge your photo independently. I've had situations where my memory has been tainted and it impacts how I feel. So I think, oh, that's a terrible photo. And then someone like my wife will walk past and go, oh, that's an amazing photo, because she didn't realise how I had to capture that photo. Everything was going wrong. Maybe the bride or the groom or a guest whoever was in it didn't quite play ball. And then I look at it and think everything sucks. But then when you look at it objectively, that's the word I'm looking for. Objectively, it's like, oh, that's a really nice photo. Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I think I don't know about you, but I suffered for years with massive imposter syndrome. You know,
Still do.
Yeah, probably. For being honest, I do as well. Yeah,
it's one of those things where I think it's very common in any creative industry. It's something I'm slowly learning to sort of just accept, but I still feel it every day. And interestingly, you speak to some of the people who we look up to, and they have massive imposter syndrome as well. And it feels almost like the higher you go, the worse it actually gets, because there's this little voice inside of you, the self-doubt inside of you, like going, everyone will realise soon that you're actually terrible. Yeah.
But people wouldn't be buying your products and buying your services if that was the case, of course. So
but that's a logical answer to an emotional problem.
No, completely.
Yeah, it's very difficult to argue emotions with logic. It doesn't work.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
So anything you can think of that happened that was unusual at a wedding? I've got a few. I'll share in a minute.
Oh gosh, where do you
of?
even begin? I am infamous for leaving stuff at weddings.
Oh, me too. I thought it was just me.
Oh no, but I am on another level. I am on the next level. I have such a reputation that at one venue, the staff follow me around, going, "What are you leaving this week, Martin?"
Fantastic.
At another venue, which I shoot at regularly, they threaten to start a Martin box, and they'll just throw all the stuff into the Martin box. And I once very famously, and to date it's never been beaten yet, I managed to get all the way home, open the boot, and realise I'd left my entire camera bag at the venue.
No way. The whole thing?
The whole thing. Had to drive back for it, because not only did I have all my camera and lenses there, I'd also left my backup drives, my laptop, everything. So I literally had no copies of the photos. So I had to drive back.
Wow.
And then luckily I managed to sneak in through the back door, because I know the venue well, and snuck it out without anyone seeing me. No, only because I didn't want the mickey taken from the venue.
No, sure. It was a venue reasonably close to home, I hope, in that case.
No, well, yes and no. It was about 35 minutes away, so it wasn't too bad.
Gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, that's never been beaten. No, it's quite impressive.
I must admit, I don't think any of mine are quite that good, really. No, I've certainly left a camera bag in a church and then realised the vicar's locked the church up, and I've got to come back from the venue to get my camera bag.
Yeah, that's happened to me as well. I had to knock. Luckily, the vicar lived next door, so knocked onto the vicarage next door and got him to open it again.
Fantastic. Yeah. No, nothing like that. We've had the usual things like grannies collapsing and Sam first aiding and doing. What else have we had? We had one where it was at a barn, and the wedding breakfast was actually going to be a fish and chip van. They had a guy bring up in a fish and chip van on a trailer. Nice idea. And he got there really nice and early. Good for him. But then sort of sat in the van being bored and managed to lock himself out the van. So I've got photos of the AA breaking into the van on wedding day to get the food out. I've had bridesmaids climbing into a house because they've locked themselves out. So I've got bridesmaids giving themselves piggybacks up the side of a garage to get into the bedroom window.
I'd love stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. But no horrendous things, really. People 45 minutes late. There's one venue that we do work at regularly. It wasn't us, but they said that the the bride and groom had been arguing all day, and by the end of the evening, it was a full-blown row, and she took the wedding ring off and threw it at him and said, "I want a divorce."
Wow.
Do you sometimes think, I mean, perhaps just leaping off to the tangent, but do you sometimes think when you work with some couples, you think, well, I don't know why you're getting married, they don't even like each other? Do you sometimes get that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you develop a sixth sense for this thing.
Yeah.
Most couples, I'd say, you do see them in love and they're clearly very close to each other, which they should be on their wedding day. Do you know what I mean? If you can't look loved up and all over each other on your wedding day, when can you? But there are some couples where you think, and I think what I always see, the little signs I think that I look for is, does the guy help the bride with little things like carrying the dress, carrying the flowers without really being told? Do you know what I mean? Because that shows he cares. Sometimes they grab their beer and they walk off, and then they turn around and like, where is she? And the bride's got a massive dress on. She's trying to drag the flowers and trying to not get the dress dirty. And I'm thinking, dude, one day just help her, for God's sake. And then it ends up being our job. And then it's like, oh, for God's sakes, yeah.
Well, Sam loves doing all that stuff. She takes brides to the toilet. She's put brides in dresses when the bridesmaids have disappeared. She's bustled dresses. She's done all that stuff. I say to grooms, all I do is tell you where the buttonhole goes. I don't do
that's one of the, I was going to say advantages, but it isn't always an advantage, I guess. Depends on how documentary you are.
Mostly.
Girls do get more access to brides during those key moments than we do. We always get ejected out. Although, I don't know, have you had this? I've had a few times where the bride and bridesmaids aren't bothered. So they start getting changed in front of you. And then it becomes a little bit like, oh my God, look at that. That ceiling's really, really interesting. And you're like looking at
look at that light fitting, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, what a great light fitting. And they're like, the
I have to say, 400 plus weddings, I've only ever done bride prep probably 3 times. And that's always been when we've had a 2-bride wedding. Sam always does it, because it's easier, as you say, to have a bride around a women getting ready. So I remember one time
my wife took my son, who was 15 at the time, to a wedding, and he was just going to be like an assistant. And for most of the bridal prep, he was just sat in the lounge. But then when they were all getting ready, none of the bridesmaids cared. So they were all walking around in like their underwear and stuff. And my son, 15-year-old son, must have thought like Christmas had come early or something. But at the same time, trying to not look.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. So there are a lot of fun to be had at a wedding day.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Martin, thanks for all the updates on some weddings that you've done. There's some great stories there. And you obviously use similar gear to me as well, so we'll have lots of Sony discussions, I'm sure, in the weeks to come. If you, the listener, have enjoyed the show, then make sure you subscribe so you can catch it in future episodes. And also, don't forget to review us if you use Apple or Spotify. Just to let you know what's going to happen. So we're going to do this show every couple of weeks, all being well. We do have a number of guests lined up from a whole wide genre of photography, but we do also want to make this an interactive show. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask us, our details will be in the show notes. We are planning, I say we, Martin, because he's the guy who does it. Martin's planning a website for the show, and we're also planning to set up a Facebook group as well. So we'd love to hear from you. Any thoughts about what you'd like us to talk about, any questions on any aspect of photography, we'll do our best to help. But in the meantime, thanks for listening, and we look forward to catching up with you again in 2 weeks' time.
See you next time, guys.